Welcome to today's episode of 219 GreenConnect, where we explore topics about the environment and green living in Northwest Indiana. You can subscribe to this podcast via iTunes or visit our website for past show archives, news, and events. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. Today, I have as my guest Eric Stahl-Smith, founder of A Greener Indiana and owner of Indiana Outfitters. With him is joining us Kevin Ayers from Leave No Trace, and they are both at the Quiet Sports Expo in Indianapolis. So thanks so much for joining us today, you two.
Thanks for having us.
So tell me a little bit about the Quiet Sports Expo. That sounds so interesting. What is a quiet sport?
A quiet sport is a sport that involves human power and no motors. And so you're talking about backpacking, hiking, biking, canoeing, kayaking, that kind of stuff. And the show's been here in Indianapolis for 4 years, and it's part of the Indianapolis Boat Sport and Travel Show, which features traveling, tourism, boats, RVs, fishing, that kind of thing. And it's really been a nice addition to the show because people are realizing that you can get a canoe or a kayak for about the price of 100 gallons of fuel, and you get to see better places anyway.
And you get to see it at a speed where you can probably really appreciate it more than speeding by under engine or something like that. You just don't tend to get to see all the beauty that you do when you're paddling at a slower speed. Well, that sounds very cool. That sounds like a great fit for you, Eric. We've had the pleasure of meeting a couple of times. I think first of all, when I found out about your site, A Greener Indiana. We can talk a little bit more about that another time. But it seems like you've always been a bit of an outdoor enthusiast, and everything that you do kind of centers around that. Did you two just meet at this expo?
Well, Kevin is from Leave No Trace, and what they do is they go around and they explain to people, Boy Scout troops and general people, it's a whole set of ethics where you can go out and enjoy the outdoors, but not disturb it in any way. So I met him at the show about 3 years ago. Okay.
So you've been going back to the show regularly for some time?
IndianaOutfitters.com is an Indiana-based trip planning guide for all the rivers, parks, and trails, and they're a major sponsor of the Quiet Sports Expo and a real promoter of people getting out and using their own power to enjoy the outdoors.
Sounds good. So what are some of the principles of Leave No Trace? I mean, I'm imagining no trash left behind, but there's probably more to it than that.
There's a lot to it, and Kevin's the real expert on that. Why don't I put him on and let him explain that?
Sounds great.
All right, here he is.
Hi, Kevin. Thanks for joining us.
Hello.
Hi there. Kathy Sipple here. Thanks so much for being on 219 GreenConnect. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the principles of Leaving No Trace?
Yes, I can. Leave No Trace is a set of principles, and it's also a non-for-profit company. And there are 7 principles. The first principle would be plan ahead and prepare, and it teaches us to think about the weather, what type of gear we're going to take, scheduling our trip when there are not a lot of other users on the trail, like holidays or big weekends, to repackage our food and minimize waste. And the second principle would be travel and camp on durable surfaces, where we can try to pick a good campsite, maybe an already impacted campsite, and stay on the trail. The third principle would be minimize campfire impacts, where it's not saying that we cannot have a campfire, but we want to minimize our impact, where we can use established fire rings or build a Leave No Trace fire with a pan fire or a mound fire. And the fourth would be respect wildlife. We want to observe wildlife from a distance, never feed the animals, and always protect our food from animals getting a hold of our food. And the fifth would be dispose of waste properly. We want to pack it in and pack it out. Then we have leave what you find. We want to preserve the past and not take artifacts that other people could enjoy when they come. And the last would be considerate of other visitors. We want to be courteous to other visitors that have come out to the wilderness to enjoy their backcountry experience, and we want to do everything we can to make their visit as pleasant as ours.
Great. Well, it sounds like all very good principles to live by. So you're teaching mainly scout troops then, or kids? Is that right, or do you teach adults as well?
We do teach scout groups, and there are 3 tiers of Leave No Trace training. The first tier would be awareness workshop, and the second would be to become a Leave No Trace trainer. And to be a Leave No Trace trainer, you have to be 14 to attend the course. And that's a 2-day training course. And going back to the awareness workshop, it could be from a half an hour to an all-day training. And then the Leave No Trace trainer course would be a 2-day training. And then the third tier of Leave No Trace training would be the Master Educator course. And it's a 5-day Leave No Trace training to teach people to teach Leave No Trace training.
Okay, great. Do you do those all over the place or just in one particular area?
Well, going back to the Boy Scouts also, if a scout is 14 years old and he attends a Leave No Trace training, there is a scouting unit position of the Leave No Trace troop trainer. So I'd like to add that in for scouting groups. Also, we have 2 training Leave No Trace trainer courses this year in Indiana, just north of Noblesville, and one is in April 5th and through the 7th, and the other is in September. I think it's the 6th through the 8th.
Okay, so once somebody would attend one of those training, they could, I think what you're saying is come back to their own troop and you could train the rest of your people. Okay, great.
Put on the program for the rest of the unit.
Yeah. Is there a website where people can find out more if they'd like to check out those training opportunities?
There sure is. There is. The Leave No Trace Center for Outdoor Ethics has their website, and it's lnt.org.
Okay, so LNT, like Leave No Trace, sounds good.
Uh-huh.
And
I also have a website. It's kevinlikes2hike.com.
Okay.
And I have a page for Leave No Trace trainings on the website.
Great. Well, I like the name of that because Kathy likes to hike too. I do quite a bit of hiking up here at the Indiana Dunes. I should say, if I didn't mention it before, that you are calling from Indianapolis, so that's where the Quiet Sports Expo is happening. Where are some of your favorite places to hike, Kevin?
I like to go to the only wilderness we have in Indiana, to the Dean Wilderness, which is right by Lake Monroe. It's a wonderful place. There's a lot of hardwoods, and you go in and out of hardwoods to pine woods, while you're hiking. There's anything from a 5-mile hiking trail to you could plan a 20-mile trip there.
Okay. And what about Eric? Eric, what are some of your favorite hiking places?
Some of my favorite hiking places, they are any of the state parks in Indiana are absolutely beautiful to hike on. And I love Indiana Dunes National Lakeshore. Do a little beach combing, and it's very long when you end up with the National Lakeshore and the state park together. I'd say it's probably 4 miles of hiking there. And then they have all sorts of trails in throughout that area that include a lot of diverse fauna and even raised trails and all of that. I think there's a lot of good hiking in northwest Indiana.
Yeah, well, I happen to agree. I tell people all the time that that's the best money I spend each year is the $36 for the state park pass. We're fortunate enough to have the Dunes State Park just about 10-15 minutes from where I live, and we're there pretty much every weekend in nicer weather, and even quite a bit when it's not so quote unquote nice. Now, Eric, I don't know if you're still doing this, but when I met you, you were spending quite a bit of time in your RV and taking extended trips to the Indiana Dunes and other destinations. Is that still the way you roll, or how are you living these days?
Yeah, absolutely. We travel around in a bus that's converted to an RV, and that really enables us to go to a place and stay for enough time to visit all the little places and help document that for the website, which is www.indianaoutfitters.com. And what we're doing is just promoting outdoor recreation tourism in Indiana. And when you think about it for a second, you just take for granted all the fishermen, hikers, bikers that are out there, but outdoor recreation tourism is Indiana's number one tourism draw, and most of those people are out there doing human-powered things, and it really helps the environment to do those kind of things and gives you some exercise and gives you a better appreciation for some of the natural areas. And even though Indiana doesn't have a lot of its land in public use, it really has carved off some of the jewels as the state parks, and it really takes more than one day to explore those. So we like to be able to spend a week there and then work with some of the area businesses, because every time you go on a trip, you need to rent a cabin or rent a canoe or a boat or a bike or anything like that. And I see that really taking off for the 219 area code, because you've completed so many really nice bike trails that actually take you places that I really see a lot of people coming up there and doing long bike trips and staying at bed and breakfast and eating in your local restaurants and visiting your wineries and doing all of that stuff. And I really think it's going to be important for your area.
Well, I agree. They are making some really nice progress with completing what they're calling blue ways and green ways, and that will actually be the focus of our April Green Drinks meetup in Valparaiso. I can't remember the date right offhand, but that's the second Monday in April, 6 o'clock at Cornucopia Coffee. So we're going to have Mitch Barloga be our speaker. He's from the Northwest Indiana Regional Planning Commission, and he'll be updating the group about new biking and paddling opportunities with some updated maps, I believe, as well. So on your website, though, I know you've got quite a bit of great information. You've got information about the state parks. You've got weather. You've got different outfitters. What all would people find? And if I were planning a trip, what would you recommend as far as how to get started? And just, take me through it.
Right. Well, IndianaOutfitters.com is designed to be a destination guide for Indiana to really help you plan a trip to the parks, rivers, or lakes. And what we've done is we just bring all of the links that you need to plan your trip into one spot. So, for instance, if you want to go to a river, you would like to know how the river's flowing right now. Well, that's provided by the USGS. And then you'd like to know the weather. That's provided by the Weather Underground. And then we've taken time to build maps to the access points and take pictures of the access points. And we're working with Northwest Indiana paddlers to help get a lot more of your rivers done this way. And that way, if somebody wants to go and do a canoe trip, they're going to be able to quickly see where the access points are, the weather. They're going to be able to have a button to find out any campgrounds or cabins or canoe rental that's available on that river.
Okay. And then
the most important part of it is, in order to have this industry be vibrant in Indiana, we have to have a lot of businesses that are servicing it. Mm-hmm. And marketing is one of the most difficult parts for a business. So we link it all together so that the businesses are easy to find, and that's doubly important for outdoor recreation because they're drawn from such a large geographical area that how is like a canoe rental operation up, let's say in Valparaiso, how are they going to market cost effectively to Chicago and Indianapolis.
Right.
Well, the only real way is through the internet, and that's, in a nutshell, why we built the website.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a great site. And another important component, I believe I remember, were trip reviews. Do you have people kind of saying what their experience was on various routes? I thought that was what I remembered.
A lot of times people will send us information in on a particular route, and then what we do is we just copy and paste that right into the website in the description of that route. There also is a website called IndianaRivers.com that's a forum-based website, kind of using older forum technology of like how it was done 5 years ago.
Right.
Where people can post about any of the rivers, and that's all cross-linked with the river destination guide on IndianaOutfitters.com.
Okay.
Because there again, we're trying to make it so that you could be at work and plan a canoe trip in 5 minutes. Okay.
Well, hey, I'm going to challenge you a little bit because I don't know, kind of getting that spring fever and ready to get outside and plan a trip. We have a dog. Can you recommend any options for people that are traveling with a pooch?
Well, all the campgrounds will allow dogs.
Okay.
If you go up to Indiana Dunes, then the dogs are only allowed in the state park section of Indiana Dunes. They're not allowed at the National Lake Shore, and they're not allowed at the beach in the state park. So what you have to do is you might be a little bit confused at first because you're going to see a no dog sign when you go to Indiana Dunes State Park. But if you just keep on going past the beach area, which is to the east, then you'll get to a dog-friendly section of Indiana Dunes.
Yeah, and I should probably clarify again, that one's kind of in my backyard, and we go there quite a bit, but I guess I'm thinking more of, an overnight trip. Is there any resource on your website that lets people, filter through dog-friendly options? But you're saying all campgrounds would be okay?
Yes, I that's the great part about outdoor sports is dogs are always welcome.
Okay.
The only time that I can think of that a dog wouldn't be welcome is in some campgrounds or if you rented a houseboat or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But dogs are welcome.
Okay. Well, I'll check that out. I have to say, I'll admit we're not the best tent campers in the world. So it's like when you get into cabins and things like that, it seems like that's a little harder to find for dog friendly. But yeah, don't want to make this about me.
I tell you, now that I think about it, if you go, one of our websites is IndianaCabinRentals.com.
Okay.
It's all linked up through IndianaOutfitters.com, but we do have a pet friendly section.
Okay, great.
So we've gone ahead and figured out which ones are pet friendly on that website.
Okay.
Not to confuse anybody.
Yeah. So back to the show, what have you guys seen kind of interesting or different this year? Are there any advances or anything kind of just new and interesting that caught your attention?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the Quiet Sports Expo is in its 4th year, and it's really starting to be quite a draw to the Indianapolis Boat Sport and Travel Show, and we're pulling people from up in Wisconsin, from Indianapolis, probably a 200-mile radius, so it's very much a regional show.
Mm-hmm.
And we have many of the groups in Indiana. We have 2 canoe clubs and hiking club, backpacking group, horse people. We have the Rails to Trails group here. We have a fly fishing area where kids or adults can learn how to fly fish. They're teaching you right there. We have a complete mountain biking course set up. So mainly the kids are using that, and they get to go around and pedal around a big mountain biking course. And the Hoosier Mountain Biking Club is on hand to show you where the trails are, and they've got maps of all of that. Then we have several gear sellers here. They're selling all sorts of different canoes and kayaks, and that's where the technology has really increased this year. From what I've seen is fishing kayaks are huge, and very stable kayaks and sailing kayaks, and there's 4 different stores here that are brought their gear in.
Okay.
And it's just a wonderful show. I mean, everybody up in your area ought to mark their calendar for next year. Typically the show happens within the first 2 weeks of February, and it's a 10-day show.
Okay.
And you can find out more information at quietsportsexpo.com.
Great. So you said there's new technology then in the canoes and the kayaks. Are they lighter or just, as you said, more stable? Is that kind of the main advances that you're seeing?
Yes, they're wider, and some of them you can have outriggers that come out, and they've got really comfortable swivel seats.
Okay.
You can stand up on them and cast.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different specialized boat, but it's really good for Indiana. It'd be great for going down the rivers and anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they also have really nice sea kayaks, which is great for your area because you have the Lake Michigan Water Trail is open now, so you can go out on Lake Michigan in your boat. And the kayaks that go down the rivers in Indiana and the kayaks that go out on Lake Michigan are two very specialized boats. They're different.
Okay.
So basically the advances are that the boats are getting better at specific purposes.
Okay. So question for you, what is your favorite quiet sport?
Canoeing and kayaking in the summer and backpacking in the winter.
Okay, cool. So how did you first get interested in these kind of activities?
Probably because I didn't have much money and I liked to do things that were free.
Mm-hmm.
So I started camping and I just fell in love with it. And then as I got more established in my career, I had the opportunity to powerboat and RV and do different things like that. But just the fact that I could sneak up on nature and get some relaxation and get a little exercise, it's really kept me rooted in all of these human-powered sports.
Good. Well, and you and I are both somewhat involved in Sustainable Indiana 2016, and we've got some initiatives coming up that tie in pretty nicely with all of these things that you're talking about. So I'm sure you'll be a big help when we get to that.
They actually have a booth here at the show.
Oh, great. Good.
And they're here, and this is their initiative for 2013 is get out and explore the trail. So they're promoting biking and hiking this year as something that everybody should get out and experience anew.
And for reasons that you kind of mentioned, it's sustainable for your pocketbook, but it's also more sustainable for health. And, as we just talked about before, leaving no trace, it's more sustainable for the earth as well. So just a lot of good reasons to get out under human power and experience the beauty that we have in our state. I'm a little partial to Northwest Indiana just because that's where I live, but I would love to do more traveling around the state. And when I do, we'll be looking at your site to get information on how to plan those trips. So besides the dunes, Eric, what's your other favorite destination within Indiana?
Well, one of the perennial most attended parks would be Turkey Run State Park, and that is it's right off of Highway 41, probably about an hour south of Chicago there, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. You wouldn't even believe you're in Indiana. But if you go there, I would strongly recommend that you go there in an off-peak time.
Okay.
So if you haven't been to Turkey Run State Park, mark your calendar to go there at an off-peak time. And Sugar Creek runs right through there. So if you want to canoe, it's probably one of the premier places in the state to canoe. You have 3 different companies that are there to help service your needs. They can shuttle your boat if you have your own boat, or they're happy to rent you a boat, and they have campgrounds and all of that stuff.
Okay. Well, yeah, I've heard great things about it, and I have not made it there, so hopefully we'll be here. Well, I know we're just about out of time, but I really want to thank you for taking time away from your busy show schedule to fill us in on the Quiet Sports Expo, and definitely we'll get that onto the 219 GreenConnect calendar for next year to let our listeners know about how they can participate. Well, I want to thank you. You've been listening to another episode of 219 GreenConnect with Kathy Sipple, and the show today was made possible by my social media coach, providing social media services for businesses and nonprofits. Our guest today was Eric Stahlsmith from A Greener Indiana and Indiana Outfitters. And also, tell me your friend's name one more time from Leave No Trace.
Kevin Ayers.
Kevin Ayers, thank you. We had a late edition right before the show, and my notes are right in front of me. So thank you so much for both of you joining us, and have a great rest of your trip.
Thanks for having us on today.
Okay, take care. See you on the trails.
Bye-bye.